I want to talk quickly. I always say quickly, and it's never quick. I want to talk about the ghostwriting in hip hop, authenticity in written expression, integrity, so many things. But the ghostwriting in hip hop, I cannot be the only one who's shocked by the number of bloggers, reactors, rappers who are kind of downplaying the seriousness of ghostwriting in hip hop. But shout out to Chris Brown, because for all his flaws, musically, he made a point to make it clear that when he's spitting bars, that's him. He wrote all of that himself. And that is still important. He said that in a recent podcast. I forget, but you can Google it or whatever. So my question is, why then are so many people acting like it's not important? If there's still these strong ideas to some of these artists that it is. It's authenticity and integrity of your artistic expression. For example, you're taking credit for writing the words when you rap or spit bars and you don't admit who wrote those words, right? It's not the same as a song. With singing, artists have openly given credit to writers for decades. Even if there's some controversy in industry politics to that, in general, it is accepted that a person can write a song and give it to another artist to sing it. That's normal, right? But rap is so much based in poetry and storytelling that even if the elements of the poetry are fictional, the person who wrote it is the artist. For example, I've been writing poetry since I was a kid. I've written some manuscripts as a kid, stories. I sent a couple to a publisher. I didn't get anything published, but I wrote it. I put my name on it. When I sent it, it had my name on it. My little sister didn't write it. My neighbor didn't write it. I wrote it. And I sort of feel like, let's say, it was somebody else's writing and I did get published and took full credit for it. That's what it almost seems like with succeeding as a rapper who's not spitting bars that they wrote for themselves. Again, not talking about reference tracks, not talking about ad-libs and hooks and all of that. I'm talking about bars, just going bar for bar, just verses. And as a poet in the 90s as well, I remember my dad, who was also a poet, always talking about the seriousness of copywriting or protecting your intellectual property, especially writing. It's to the point where I have a video of him on YouTube of when he read one of his poems at a mental health event. He refused to allow me to make it public to share because in his mind, those words are so important. He doesn't, the thought that anyone could perpetrate them as his own or as their own without his permission, it's a conviction my dad has that's just unwavering. He's not even a rapper. He's just a poet, a very good one, a complex one. And so when I went to college, it was enforced even more, the idea of integrity in work. For example, I made a lot of money in college being a shadow scholar. Of course, I could tutor a student. I can help them write their paper. I can help them do some research. But I knew where the line was between helping them formulate the words or their own ideas and just giving them my ideas. As a shadow scholar, that's when I was doing all the work myself. And they would just take it and put their name on it for a grade. And I made a lot of money doing this. It wasn't difficult to do at all. I could guarantee B's or A's. In some circumstances, I couldn't make guarantees, but it wasn't very difficult to do. And until it got to the point where I was no longer, I felt, when I went to grad school, I decided I wouldn't do it anymore, period, right? And I still had people reaching out, calling, sending me emails, just wanting, they would claim they just wanted some editing or some proofreading or feedback, but really they just wanted me to provide my services and skills so that they could get a good grade or pass a class or something of that sort. I've even taken whole online classes for people for money. Am I proud of it? No. But I decided to stop doing it in grad school. Why? Because I felt that conviction, though. I have never, ever submitted any form of writing in my name for a grade, ever. Because why? I have ideas. Why would I need to fake like I don't? Why would I need to steal somebody else's? And we were taught citation and plagiarism and intellectual integrity and all of those things in such a way that line just got clearer and broader. And I decided to stop doing the shadow scholar work in grad school because I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a person who could have a clear conscience about putting my material out there and no longer being attached to anything that dishonest, like selling my thoughts and ideas to other students so they can get a grade, right? And then, even after that, the idea of written expression and citation and giving credit where credit is due with ideas from songs, poetry, book reports, essays, it got even more reinforced when I started teaching middle school English. There's a writing process that most of us are familiar with that has to do with outlining or drafting. Depending on what you're doing, it may start with some research. You're outlining, you're drafting, then you're doing some form of revising where you're checking your work, checking your information, and then finally you're doing some editing and some proofreading. When I taught my students, we had a poster, I would call my students authors. And we would say every day in class that as authors, no matter what the name of the school was, let's say the name of the school is Berkeley. As Berkeley authors, we plan purposefully, write authentically, revise judiciously, edit entirely, and publish proudly. And that's something I grilled into them. The plan is where you factor in, what is this for? Is this an assignment? Is this something? And we could apply this to anything, right? An email, a TikTok comment. In your brain, you have a plan for what it is you're trying to say. And you consider who it is you're talking to. That's your audience, the feedback that you want. So academically, they had to understand the assignment. That's where the plan came into play. And most of my students, for the most part, understood that, right? We could break that down. But writing authentically stumped a lot of them. It was the authenticity of it. And there were some of them were assuming it meant just to tell the truth or know that you have the right answer. And we had to really dig into authentic ideas, even finding your own authentic voice, which was a huge part of what I wanted to do with my students as they were in middle school. And I primarily taught 6th grade. So finding your voice as a writer, as an author, whether you're writing a 2-sentence reply to a written prompt or a writing prompt or whatever it is you're writing, that's what I wanted to mold with them. So that took more effort and work. But in teaching that, it made the concept of having your own original ideas more important to me in teaching my students and helping them understand the criticalness of it, right? So, and I'm done teaching. It's just too stressful, but it's a lesson that I don't think enough of us have truly, truly had, to find our own authentic voice. One student was saying, well, if it's fiction, why does it matter, right? Or do you only write what you believe or the things you agree with? And I just remember it was almost like the Holy Spirit gave me this example in the middle of teaching the class, that whatever your beliefs, your values, or your morals are, even if you write fiction that includes complexities that don't necessarily align completely with what you think and what you believe and who you are, your overall themes can come back to who you are as a person. For example, if I believe strongly in fidelity, You know, like my parents were married 30-something years before my mom passed. My dad was always home collecting SSI, so he wasn't a philanderer. And we were homeschooled, so he was always home and we were always home. I value fidelity. If I were to write a book, and I told them, my students this, if I were to write a book where my main character is involved in, being with someone else's husband, without there being some reflection of my ideas about how that worked, like I couldn't celebrate it, right? I wouldn't be able to uphold it or honor it. She fell in love with this other woman's husband, and in the end of the book, they just end up together. Like, that can be a book. Somebody can write that book and has written that book. I could not, in my own authentic voice, write that book. Not just because I disagree with it, but because I hold no inner celebration of those ideas. I don't even know how that works out. I haven't seen it work that way. You get what I'm saying? So it doesn't mean that I can't include those realities in my writing, but authentically, what would be my point? And then one student asked me, okay, yeah, but why would you even want to write about something like that anyway? And I told her, because a lot of times there are benefits to writing inauthentically, because sometimes salacious things sell. Sometimes the drama can make you money. Sometimes, bending even your own views of things just a little bit can get you some form of what you might perceive as success or opportunity, or might get you the outcome you want. And that's why I put it up so high with writing. So we have our plan, and as we write from our own thoughts and ideas, even if we're still sorting them out, because we don't want to begin practicing saying what we think people want to hear. And that's what a lot of schools do, which is another reason I don't want to teach anymore, and another reason I was glad I was homeschooled, because one of the problems we have, even with those who are listening to not music but hip-hop, is we are very comfortable with not only saying what people want to hear, but having people tell us what we want to hear, even if that's not who they are, even if it's not who we are when we tell them what they want to hear. And that, to me, is the big problem with this ghostwriting thing in hip-hop. We are realizing that a lot of artists, rappers, have just been saying what they know will sell, whether they're being forced to or not, or whether they're doing it of their own accord. I know that labels have a heavy influence on what type of music, especially hip-hop artists, put out, because it's such a charged genre. It's a unique genre. We don't have to pretend it's not. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pressure to do things a certain way. Like, if you listen to Vince Staples, one of his songs on his new album, he's talking about it, like how the execs wanted him to go more with the street stuff. To have people tell you what they want you to say because they know it sells, that's one reason why a writer might choose to be inauthentic. But it's selling out, and it's problematic across the board. So to hear all the support for it has been disgusting to me. And I'm piecing together a lot of the reasons why every stage of who I am as a writer, and as somebody who has taught writing or has hoped to teach my people, the children of Detroit, primarily African American, only 99% of my students were African American. And they're constantly told how their writing should look and how it should come about. But they're not taught how to find their own authentic voice. And it was beautiful to actually be a part of helping them find that. Some, especially the ones who found it right before my very eyes, or already had it when they came to the class. So this ghostwriting thing is just sick. It's sick. And of course, and I'm going to end it on this note. One of the main questions that many of my students asked when I went over the mantra of the class at the beginning of the year as Berkeley authors, again, never taught at a school called Berkeley, just using it. As Berkeley authors, we plan purposefully, write authentically, yada, yada, yada. And so many of them say, well, what if I don't want to be an author? And that's where I would get them at. Like, because listen, you may never want to pursue publishing a book, but you already are an author. You authorize every piece of writing you put out there. Y'all have so much writing already floating on the internet and text messages and things of that sort, emails. So even though this is not graded work, even though it may not be a work of fiction, even though it may not be something that anybody may ever see, or you may not even remember you did it, but every time you put words out there, not just when you speak, but when you write, you author something. You're authorizing something. You hit and you click submit when you send that comment on TikTok. And no matter where you fall on that spectrum of only communicating and writing as is necessary for your life, or becoming a published author or journalist or writer of some sort, you have to understand what it is you're saying, and does it represent you when you say it? Because when you put it out there, you're suggesting it does represent you. And I loved that wasn't a debated point after that. I loved that in each class, after those initial questions and conversations, they all understood themselves to be authors. And if they didn't remember, because sixth graders, and I taught a couple of seventh and eighth, they forget a lot, but we said it every day because we are all authors. And ghostwriting is like just living a fake life in rap. That's the parallel I'm seeing, just being inauthentic. And obviously, dang, that does go beyond just rap. It's the whole music industry. We know that. It's the entertainment industry. But rap, hip-hop was rooted in something so organic and grassroots that to see what it has become from what I remember it as, and not to say it was perfect then, but just the simple concept of not writing your own bars. It's egregious. We should all be outraged. And we should be concerned about the children too, because, anyway. But yeah, I was trying to go to sleep, and I was thinking about it, and I wanted to record this before it just slipped away. If you're watching this, please leave a comment. If you disagree, if you have questions, please leave a comment. You don't have to like or subscribe. Just be a part of the conversation.